Welcome, everyone, to the NexGEN in Retail Conversation. I'm Harold Fisher. I am the host of the News Talk program, The Daily Drum, on WHUR and Sirius XM, channel 141 with the Howard University Radio Network. Going out of business and then coming back is not a new thing for retail. From digital technology enhancing experiences, e-commerce, home and curbside delivery, 2020 forced retailers to reimagine the online and offline customer service experience. Well, today, we're going to talk about how the pandemic has reshaped their small and local businesses. We have some great minds with us this morning. I'm joined by Victoria Lai. She is the founder and owner of Ice Cream Jubilee. She's been in business since 2014. We have Dr. Gautham Vadakkepatt. He is the founding director of the George Mason University Center for Retail Transformation. And we also have Yolanda Dandridge James. She is the CEO of Insight Opticians. She has been in business since 2005. Thank you all for joining the conversation. I appreciate it. Let me first start with you, Ms. Lai, and I will, admonish you for not bringing ice cream for the entire class.
I agree.
But as I said, you've been in business since 2014, but the world shut down in March of 2020. You were already having a thriving, growing business. When the pandemic hit, what were your first thoughts in reference to your business plan? What were you most concerned about?
Thank you for having me here.
Sure.
At Ice Cream Jubilee, we opened in 2014, and no year has been the same. We went from one store to two stores to another kitchen to expanding in wholesale. And so when the pandemic hit and we closed and had to reinvent how we thought about retail and how we thought about reaching our customers, it was almost just like another evolution of our business. I think that's the optimistic way of looking at it, as opposed to looking at a catastrophe. But the difference in this evolution was, my first thought was, how am I going to make sure that all of my staff and our family of employees stay safe, stay housed, that their children have health care and child care, so we can continue getting back to normal whenever we learn that it's time to get back to normal. So we circled the wagons and took stock of what we all needed, whether or not it was a little bit of bonus to pay the rent before assistance came in. How can we look out for each other, and then how can we get back to business?
How many people are we talking about for your business at that time during that first shutdown? Your business isn't a teeny tiny business. You're talking about a lot of people. How many people were we talking about making this adjustment for?
Sure. So in March 2020, we were just coming out of the winter, so we're probably at our lowest staffing time, and it doesn't include when we have all of our summer employees. So we had about 40 employees that we're taking care of. Many of them have been with us for 5 or more years.
Ms. James, same question. During the shutdown in March, and your business had already been extremely active, what were your first thoughts as a businesswoman about how you were going to make this adjustment? Not the shift, because that's a different issue, but just the initial adjustments to keep your business afloat.
My main concern...
And grab your microphone for us, please, if you can. Thank you.
My main concern was, we do have a teeny tiny business. So my main concern was my customer. I knew they needed to see. Some of them have health issues with their eyes. So I was concerned about my customers and how they were going to get to us. So we did shut down for a few days, and then we realized that people were stepping on their glasses, they were drinking and having fun, and they needed repairs. They needed screws. People still needed eye exams. So we just had to figure out how we were going to approach this. A lot of it was by curbside. We did a lot of curbside. I started, even though I wasn't a fan of virtual fitting, I started doing virtual fitting and sending selections of glasses to customers.
And to that point, I wear glasses. That is a very personal business. Some would say it's an intimate kind of interaction between customers and the business owner. Was it difficult to make that shift? And I'm thinking about, just from your perspective, you wear glasses also. Was there a point at which you had to just kind of sit down and say, how am I going to do this?
I was doing some virtual fitting before the pandemic. So a lot of times I would ask for certain details, pictures, measurements of the glasses that they were wearing. And I'm very visual. So from there, I would make a selection and send it to the customer. And then as they would try on, I would once again do like a Zoom call, and just to get an idea what would work for them, along with knowing their prescription. So my virtual fitting is a little more in-depth compared to like a Warby Parker or some of these online vendors.
Dr. Vadakkepatt, as we know, there were some businesses that did not survive
more than some
2020. And there were others that did. From your perspective, what was the difference?
I think you heard it here, right? People who prioritize their employees and their customers, and they figured out, they were creative in how they came up with solutions, they were able to manage that big black swan event. Those who were not able to had some issues. And the other aspect that they dealt with was the issue of actual financial liquidity. People who had financial liquidity were able to manage that transition a little bit better than those who did not.
Talk to me about that, the thought process, because business owners, both of these business owners, these things do not just come out of the air. There are thought processes, there are plans, and the like, Dr. Vadakkepatt, and you have to be resilient as well as creative. For some people, the pandemic was a nail in the coffin. For others, this was, as Ms. Lai was suggesting, an opportunity. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head, right? For many people, this was a nail in the coffin because they were already feeling the pressures of how retail was evolving. And as a consequence, they had to shut down. This was just, we use this term often, this just accelerated their demise in many ways. For others, this was an opportunity to pivot. And the real reason for this is that there are lots of headwinds that retail is facing from multiple different directions, right? The bigger companies, the technology that people have to implement, how do you actually keep costs down? How do you get employees in the stores? And all of these came to fruition at the same time during this pandemic. And that's really what made some people close business, if that makes sense.
Ms. Lai, what was the most difficult time for you after March of 2020 during the course of this pandemic?
Well, after March of 2020 and in April when we reopened, we were getting to learn about how we could operate safely. I was talking to my staff every single day to say, what was your experience with the customers? Do you still feel safe? Do you still feel like we're doing the right thing? And having that feedback and hearing from them, I think just reinforced our trust. That was very important. What was very challenging was when the world began to open up again, and different customers and different employees had different levels of comfort of what they wanted to do. Say, maybe there was a customer who was fully vaccinated and thought they shouldn't have to wear a mask indoors or outdoors, because some scientists were saying that. Some of our staff were saying, well, we see so many customers, we're not comfortable with customers doing that. What should we do now? And so addressing those personal concerns was a challenge, but having that trust and communication already made it a little bit easier.
I see you nodding your head, Ms. James, about some of those dark times. Share that with us.
I went through the same
And hold
thing.
your microphone up for us.
I went through the same thing. We had to gain the customer's trust once we did open our doors and stop doing the curbside. We locked our door, number one, because we couldn't have people just come into the store, picking up glasses and trying them on. So every time somebody tried on a pair of glasses, we had to disinfect. So if I had my door open, we would have constantly been cleaning glasses as opposed to helping the customer. So that was one thing we did. And then we started setting up appointments once we closed down the curbside. And customers really appreciated that. They liked the idea of having that personalized service. They could come in we gave them an hour, and they really loved that, to sit down with Tony and I, make sure they had the perfect fit, and make sure their prescription was on point. The same thing would happen when they would pick up the glasses. I really had a chance to put my optical skills to work, because it takes time if somebody's having a visual problem to find out what's going on. Another thing we had a problem with was the fact that our doctor didn't come back. So we had to find a doctor close by that we could refer the customers to, but we also had to make sure that when they went to that optical shop, that it was a shop that didn't clash with what we carried. So, and that we're still doing the same thing. We still haven't found a doctor, but it's working out pretty good as far as eye exams are concerned.
Yeah, okay, and see and I think that's one of the challenges. Your doctor left when, or you lost your doctor when?
Right at the pandemic.
So March.
He had an office right across the street, and he would come over and do eye exams for us, like 2 or 3 times a week. And at that point, we didn't have a doctor, so it's like, okay, we had to find someone.
So that's the pivot.
That was the pivot for that.
That's the pivot, and so you're still pivoting.
I'm still pivoting. Every day is a pivot.
You're still pivoting now.
I'm dizzy.
or in this case, I guess you moved from pivot to pirouette.
Right, really.
So how does that pirouette look now for your business model? How have you been able to thrive and survive pirouetting when you don't have a doctor? I mean, that's a key part of your business.
It is. It's a key part. What we've done, like I said, we found a very good doctor we refer people to. And he's like right around the corner. And another thing we did was by offering this service, of like that individual service, people tell other people about us and how safe they felt, and how the place was clean, and how they would witness the fact that we were cleaning each frame. So our business is really word of mouth.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Vadakkepatt, you were going to make a comment talk to me about the pirouette, because that's a long-term challenge. Yep. She has lost a major part of the business, and whether you're designing glasses, coming up with Tutti Frutti ice cream, or anything at all, if you lose a major part of your business, that could be the death knell, or, as they may say in business school, an opportunity.
Well, it's glass half empty, half full kind of a problem, right? And I fully agree. Like that pirouette is still ongoing, and people are struggling to figure out where do you actually end up. Let me tell you what I see happen most often is that people leverage technology. They go into social media and they try to get people. Yolanda just talked about how word of mouth is important, right? So they try to get that to happen. They try to build these connections with customers. We use this word, customer intimacy. Get to really know your customer. Give them what they really need. That's what people are trying to to pivot around and figure out what's the new need. Customer needs and values have changed. And what most successful retailers are doing now is trying to figure out where is it that they need and values are and deliver on that.
Ms. Lai, you were going to share something.
Yeah, I was going to jump in about another challenge to reopening. As customers think that we're a different degree of open, or businesses are, landlords also think that we're at a different degree of opening. And that's a conversation that every brick and mortar retail owner needed to have. And it's ongoing as news develops and the virus develops and our society develops. Having a strong relationship with my point of contact at each of my landlord's offices was very important. But at the same time, that is a less intuitive conversation to have and much more math-based, reasoned-based. And I was able to have that because I had strong, organized profit and loss statements from the last 3 years, and I could say, this is why you want me to stay. This is why we can be a partnership together, and develop that trust in a different way, have a different sort of conversation. But fundamentally, it is that same intimacy and trust.
But to that point, landlords are the very, allow me to, no pun intended, are the foundation of brick and mortar. They are brick and mortar. And landlords have suffered mightily during the course of the pandemic as businesses have failed, have not come back, or in some cases they have slowed, their tenants have slowed. Those conversations, as you're suggesting, are not at all easy. Moving forward for businesses that are prosperous, larger business, smaller business, and I'll ask you again, Ms. Lai, is the next evolution to own your own building?
I think owning real estate has always been a goal in the United States. I think retail, retail or not retail, and our tax laws are designed around that. So yes, if you can own your own building in a prosperous growth area, do that. However, it is very challenging, and you'll see that retail owners have different experiences when you have a large national or international corporation who owns rapid development, multi-use businesses, or a local family who owns several different mixed-use properties within the city. They are not always. No one landlord is the villain that we can easily make broad statements about. However, choices are difficult both for tenants and landlords, and sometimes one side wins more than the other.
You were going to say something, Dr. Vadakkepatt, when I mentioned owning one's own building.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, one, I fully agree with what was just said. There is no villain in this, right? We are all in this together. And I think that's the key thing that needs to happen, is to understand from a real estate perspective as well as a tenant perspective, hey, let's do this dance together. Let's figure out what is it that makes sense jointly, a little bit more flexibility. There's quite a bit of rigidity in some of these things that happen, some of these fixed leases, for instance. Let's have a little bit more flexibility in all of these things. That's the main driver that I will push forward to, is those conversations we heard someone speak earlier. Right? Hey, let's listen. Let's really listen to the problems, jointly figure out the solutions.
Ms. James, you are located really in the heart of DC.
Yes, right down the street.
Right down the street, and microphone, please. I'm going to have to
Sorry
get you to yell
about that.
for me. That's quite all right.
Yeah, I'm right down the street. And the first thing we did when we knew this pandemic was starting, we contacted the landlord and set up a way to, we told them, how are we going to do this? We probably will not be able to pay rent for a few months. So basically what they did, they gave us the option of either extending on the end of the lease or...
Try her microphone, please.
Is that better?
Okay.
Okay.
It's
Go
better?
ahead.
Okay. Either extending the lease or once we pick back up, they gave us till September to, start making payments along with our regular rent. And I mean, we really appreciated that. Every month we send them P&L statements to let them know, where we were at that time. And they've been working with us. They were really great. I mean, I was kind of blessed to have this type of landlord.
And that type of tenants too. I
Oh,
might just
right.
interject because showing your
Oh, you just have
books.
to, right. And not
Yeah,
just the
and
landlord, but with vendors. I mean, we
Yep.
were like on it right away, just letting them know, how can we work together? And then, then eventually, like as customers started coming in, and what helped us out by July, people were really spending money on glasses again. So I still had up until September to not have to really pay rent. So it kind of worked out. I mean, it was the pandemic. It's sad. People lost their lives, but we're doing pretty good. I mean, nowhere near what we were doing, but we just had to adjust.
Which brings me, and I'll let you continue with this question, with the pretty good. We are now at the end of summer of 2021. What does pretty good mean for you?
I'm able to pay rent. I'm able to collect a paycheck. And as far as I had to cut down on inventory, but that's okay because I don't have the traffic anyway. So pretty good. We're able to pay our bills.
And what
I can
about your,
unlock my door.
and your staff? Because this is not just about inventory, profit and loss, but this is also about, for lack of a better term, the mental health of the people who've really stuck with you to support the business that you started. How are they?
They're doing great. My former business partner stepped down, and so therefore, the person that's been assisting me for 8 years, I ended up making him my business partner. So that gave him the drive for us to work together, and we wanted to make this thing happen. So we were able to survive because I gave this person a chance, a part of the business.
Ms. Lai, are you all pretty good, great? How has your business changed over the past 16 or 17 months now?
Well, it's September now. We're just coming off of a summer season. It was very hot, as you recall. So we did good business. It was wonderful to be able to reach so many customers. With the Nationals baseball season and the tourists coming to Washington, D.C., and the office tenants not being what they were, we're not at our sales levels as before. However, I think that we're doing great because we've been able to really launch and expand our non-retail lines of business. Well, actually, it's all retail. It's just non-brick and mortar. So
What does that mean,
nationwide shipping.
Okay.
So we ship our ice cream with dry ice. So our friends who used to come to Ice Cream Jubilee every week, but moved back with their parents in Indianapolis or are doing school from home in Boston, they can receive Ice Cream Jubilee on dry ice shipped to them every week or as often as they want. We're also sold in Whole Foods in 7 different states, and having the bandwidth and the focus to expand that area of business has balanced out all of Ice Cream Jubilee and learned more about our customers in different places.
What have you learned, Ms. James, through all of this? What is the aha moment for you when you look back between March 2020 and now?
Like I said before, customers are job one. That's number one. I mean, it's great when somebody comes through my door and they say, "Oh, I'm so glad you're open. I'm so glad you made it." Customer appreciation, I must say.
Any advice for business owners who are just starting out or may perhaps be in the same position that you're in right now, who have come through this process but are still just wondering, what the heck did I do?
I would recommend always having your paperwork ready, your P&Ls, because I know a lot of businesses that didn't survive, they were kind of sketchy before this. And when they had to apply for the PPP and all that, they didn't have their act together so much. And just making sure you stay on top of your paperwork and having it ready.
Aha moment for you, Ms. Laurie?
Creativity is everything. When people weren't walking in our doors in April 2020, I thought to myself, what do we have an infinite amount of? It's creativity. So I worked with my staff and brainstormed and came up with new ice cream flavors, and then put out on social media and to our email list that we will bring this to your neighborhood. We will drop it off safely with dry ice to your curbs. And people wanted to try new things. They wanted to do something different. And that was able not only to get some cash coming through the door, but give ourselves a sense of purpose when we had to close and figure out what was going on. I would agree with what Yolanda was saying about keeping your books in order. And then I would follow that up with be very, very aware of the people and institutions that want to help you as an individual and a small business. I have to give a plug for the DEMPED and DSLBD, all of the DC institutions, and I also worked with Arlington County for my Arlington store, were very easy to reach out to when there were grants available, when I had questions, if I had an issue with DCRA. There was always somebody to talk to, and so I applaud the DC government for doing that. But if you never make that call, if you don't stay on hold to talk to that person, you'll never get your answer, and you won't get the help and possibly money that's there to make sure that business owners and businesses succeed.
Dr. Vadakkepatt, this has also been transformative for you personally. I mean, you've kind of carved out your own, cottage industry, in that you've created this information center based on what has come out of the pandemic. Talk to us about that and what you've heard from both of these ladies.
Yeah, so the center was launched in the peak of pandemic, and the idea is that 90% of retail is small and medium size retail, and they are the glue that holds the community together. And what we learned through the process was that we talk about technology, we talk about data analytics and supply chain and things like that, but the real critical element to success is relationships. Building relationships, being very strong in your relationship, not just with the customers, but with the employees and the other people, the whole ecosystem. If you're able to do that, you can survive and thrive. Consumers want to support local retail. I can't tell you the number of stories where people have said, man, I wish my restaurant was open. As a family, we ourselves have seen like significant decline in the number of restaurants we could visit. And so there is this need and this drive, and this has become salient. We just need to give them support to actually succeed in the new world that emerges post-pandemic.
Was there an aha moment for you during this process?
For me, the aha moment was the resilience and creativity of the retailers. It was phenomenal. The efforts they went through to keep the doors open, to give employees paychecks, when I know some of their books were like they were actually giving up on things themselves to actually make that happen. That was the aha moment for me. That's why I'm so energized about retail.
I think this is a great point to end on. I want to thank all of you for sharing your expertise, your experience. I'm glad to see that you've all come out on this side of the pandemic. As we know, as they say, this ain't over.
Oh, no.
Not by a long shot, but I really appreciate you coming in Victoria Live with Ice Cream Jubilee, Dr. Gautham, Vadakkepatt with the George Mason University Center for Retail Transformation, and Yolanda Dandridge James, CEO of Insight Opticians. Thank you all for coming to the DC Retail Summit. I'm Harold Fisher, and we will continue to watch and see what you're doing. The best of luck to all of you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you for having us.